Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekends with Amit, and I am Krishanu, your host. Today, we are going to talk about a subject which may have different connotations for different people, which most subjects are, by the way. The subject that we are going to deal with today is what is God? Now, my God, this is a subject in which there have been so many interpretations. People have gone to war, killed so many people, did everything that God stops us to, or so called the way we define God generally asks us not to do. We do all that things in the name of God blatantly. And there are people who do not believe in God. There are people like Nietzsche who claims that God is dead, we have killed him. So there are various versions of this. Today, we are going to learn about what the quantum science, as interpreted by Professor Goswami, has to say about what is God. Help me welcome Professor Goswami and Dr. Valentina Onisor. Thank you so much for being here with us. Today's subject is what is God? Well, in one way, this is so oft discussed by so many people in so many ways. So we'd like to see how you are going to, our viewers would be really keen to understand how you see God. What is God?
Oh my God, what a question, right? What is God? Of course, many people, I'm sure, think that God has been eliminated by the idea of scientific materialism that today's scientists vouch for. The idea that matter is everything. If matter is everything, there is no room for God, it seems like. But it is not really so. It is not really so. We cannot seem to do without the concept of God in any conceptual construction of the universe, including the materialist version of science. Well, let's examine the materialist version. Materialist version of science is based on quantum physics. The idea that everything is made of elementary particles, matter, and energy both consist of these discrete quantities we call quantum in case of energy, we call elementary particle in case of matter. When we look at these objects, we find that they're very peculiar, weird objects. They're not really particles in the normal sense. The equation that governs their behavior shows squarely that they're actually waves. And yet, when we observe them, we see them as very particle-like, localized in one place. Waves are not localizable in one place. Waves can be many different places at the same time. So how does a multifaceted object like a wave, many different positions at the same time, become a one-faced object like a particle, one position at a time? This is a question that is very difficult to comprehend until you realize that the waves must exist in a domain that is outside of space and time. There's a different domain of reality than just space and time. Well, this already makes scientific materialists tremble with fear. Their worldview is about to crash. Nevertheless, of course, there is an escape here, which is that the quantum science, quantum mathematics also says that we can calculate from the wave properties the probability of where the particle will be found. When we collapse the wave into a particle through our experiment, where the particle will be found, at least the probability of it can be calculated. And that's where the power of quantum physics is revealed in physics and chemistry, where we are always dealing with billions of objects and trillions of objects, quadrillions of objects, and probability is enough. But ultimately, conceptually, it is not a whole ensemble of objects that collapses, but collapses over individual situation. One object collapses individually. And that's the problem. What determines where and when this object will collapse? So, it, many scientists beg the issue by saying, well, collapse is a causal. We cannot give a cause, but that's okay. Science does not have to have a cause. But that's really a non sequitur. The whole idea of science is to find a causal explanation of phenomena. Giving that up is non sequitur because that leads us nowhere. So, what science is really saying is not that. No need to give up causality. The implicit assumption here is that there is a causal agent, except that causal agent acts in a random way. The outcome determines the outcome of the collapse. Like throw a dice to determine where the collapse will land the object. See that? Dice playing God. You can call this agent God, and materialist God is a dice playing God. This is what Einstein objected in that very famous statement that you may have heard. God does not play dice. That was his belief. Now, all this would be irrelevant, you may say. Do we really need this issue? Even the fact that materialist science do have a God, a dice playing God. Do we really need this issue? But it turns out that yes, we do. Our mental health, even physical health, depends on whether we have a healthy notion of God or an unhealthy, incomplete, misconceived notion of God. The history shows us that. Materialistic beliefs began to dominate us since the 1980s. That's when the materialist paradigm was finally formulated to success according to its protagonist. And the academy in the United States and elsewhere, right away, overnight. I still remember how quickly that happened. Overnight shifted to the dogma that science must accept. Richard Feynman put it this way: we must accept the straitjacket of scientific materialism. Recognizing that it's a straitjacket, it's a limiting belief, but we have to accept it in order to carry science further. Further against what? That's the part Feynman didn't say, and that's the part people would not acknowledge readily, except when you read the history of what was going on at that time. It's political. Science always saw an opportunity to dominate over the alternative worldview that also has been around and still around, called the religious worldview. And they used that opportunity to declare that everything is matter. And indeed, there is much data supporting that, but there is also much data not supporting that. And as I said, quantum physics shows that you cannot even eliminate the concept of God truly in this way. Dice playing God is tantamount to saying that the old idea of fatalism. Things happen and we cannot really do anything about it. Fatalism. There is escape from that too. Quantum physics does not apply to the macro world, only to the submicroscopic world of the elementary objects. But these are all either escapes or non sequitur. We don't gain anything by this. Let's look at what actually happens. So materialism was instituted in the 1980s, and what has happened? Religion did not go away. Religious movements continued, and the world, starting with the United States, become divided into two camps, two tents of people. One is a dice playing God believer, and the other is a believer in God, religious belief, which is that God is the grand judgmenter, the King of Kings who judges people on the basis of, have you followed my virtues that I dictate for you, like the Ten Commandments? If you follow those virtues, then you can stay with me in heaven. If not, I'll banish you to a place of fire and brimstone called hell. Okay, I'm dramatized. I get serious religions don't state things this way, but they do have this idea of God as the commander of virtues and subtle bodies that survive the death of the material body. And then there is the concept of virtue and sin if we have followed the rules of God. The sophisticated name for these aspects of God is archetype. But this model also is not a very good one, misunderstood. How do we know? Scientific materialism has created these two trends in the world and much mischief with that. Religions have over the years, over centuries, produced so much mischief that I don't even have to mention. Both of these are power plays and creates elitism. They are simplistic beliefs that make people very manipulable. And the leaders manipulate these people to their advantage. Materialism does that to create the elitism of meritocracy. Look at today's Democratic Party in the United States and the opposition does the same thing, creating an elitism of religious or wealth-based plutocracy. In any case, you get elitism. Bulk of the people are manipulated with following them and not to their advantage. There is huge income disparity, huge power disparity between strata of societies. A small percentage governs the rest of society. Where is the idea of democracy in this? Very little. I mean, don't disregard that. That very little is still very important. Freedom of speech, etc. Just look at Russia and China to realize how important this little freedom that we enjoy in the rest of the world is. So nobody is complaining about what we have, but the point is that we still are very far from a healthy mental and physical health of the society. We suffer. We suffer. We suffer from this schizo. It's literally a schizo between different isms. The schizo shows up in the polarization of the trends that I have mentioned, but the schizo showed up personally in personality disorders in people. Specifically, technically, we call it the schizoid personality. How crazy are we if we're all schizoid in one way or another? Schizoid, some rationally overzealous in rationality, some overzealous in negative emotionality. But schizoid, nevertheless, cannot balance the two. consider this, compare this with the third alternative, which is having a healthy picture of God. This is the basis of spiritual wisdom traditions. Today, we call these wise people mystics because materialists claim we cannot really understand that they're kind of woo people. Not really so. What that's saying is that there is a oneness behind us, behind our separateness. All we are all separate consciousnesses, seems like that, but it's only seems like that. They say behind which we really are one. Find the picture of islands, and below they're connected by the bedrock of the ocean. That's the way we are. We are rooted in this oneness. Oneness splits to create experience, where one part of the oneness sees the other part as separate from itself. And God is the agent of this oneness, causal agent of this oneness. God is the causal agent of this oneness, and God is the causal agent how this oneness operates in us to instill virtues in us. Virtues are in potentiality, and we can access them, and that's what God is about. God helps us access this wealth in weight for us to transform from the base level condition, which is very materialistic existence, by the way, conditioned and all that, negative emotional, in addition to conditioning. Pleasure, that also is another bugaboo that we have built in. We say pleasure, not consciousness. Pleasure can be mechanical. So there is a tendency of being mechanical, but there is also built-in potentialities that can lift us from the mechanical, is what these spiritual traditions are saying. And look at them. Look at the founders of this tradition: Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Socrates, the greatest people we can find in our history. You know, they are not Genghis Khans and Napoleon and Tsars of Russia. They are not great people. They are conquerors, but they are cruel, inhuman people. Real people are the people I just mentioned. They are the people. How does one reach that? Through transformation is what they are saying. So really, healthy picture of God, you get wonderful people, and the civilizations that occasionally follow this dictum of these people. There are a few examples of that, and they too show us that what is potentially possible. Pericles' Greece, Ashoka's India. These are just two glaring examples. So what is your choice? How do you choose between these three alternatives? What do you think? How should you think of God? To give a little help, I'll tell you this. Quantum science supports this mystical God. Von Neumann started this interpretation. He said it's consciousness that chooses out of the possible positions of the electron, the actual position where the electron is found in experiment, in a particular experiment. Whose consciousness? He was a little misconceived about that. He said individual consciousness, and later, through a revolutionary insight, I realized that this consciousness really has to be a oneness, a connected consciousness, connected non-locally, without signals. This is a quantum concept, verified experimentally. This year's Nobel Prize was given for such non-local instant connection between people, which is this oneness, consciousness. And you know, subsequently, My work and others have contributed to this too, gave rise to quantum science, which supports this healthy view of God. And on that basis, we now know the secrets of happiness, very close to what mystics thought. Yes, we have made some subtle adjustments, and the path to happiness is much clearer today, but this is the way. So, what do you think? You want to reconsider God? Well, you have work to do. The advantage of the religious view and this materialist scientist view is that you can be lazy. You will be manipulated, but can be lazy. You don't have to do anything. You can just be. Let it all hang out. Let the world be a chaos. Let your life be a chaos. Let you be mentally sick and schizoid. But if you don't give a hoot about it, the world doesn't give a hoot either. The world just destroys itself. Civilization just goes downhill. This is what we are seeing today. But if you do care, what then? That's what Valentina will explain. Valentina?
Yes. Hello, everybody. And the more we do these Facebook shows, it's like, for me, it's infinite subjects, you know, and it's very inspiring every time for me. And indeed, there are tons of errors of the materialism approach in various eras. And we talk about this in our courses. Just to remind you, what we do is actually spiritual science. And quantum science, quantum activism, it is a hero's journey and it is spiritual science. So it's a new kind of science and a new kind of spirituality also that is bringing. So indeed, there are tons of debates and theories and needs a careful understanding between theology, philosophy, and on, you know. But actually knowing God, you know, and the triad actually, which is, you find that this triad in Christianity, in the Hindu tradition, in all the traditions, is not but just the pure speculation. Uh, in simple words, to me, it's about purification and openness, not just of the heart, but we speak about all these other parts which are very important in our being, but especially the heart, I would say, and to be able to perceive this reality in ourselves and in the world, and again, to me, to really deeply know God, obviously it's about a knowledge in love that is increasing, and this progress in love to me is progress in knowledge as well. So it's, again, we learn in quantum science that uh, when we say love, you know, we also say other things. You know, we it implies a certain lucidity and state of centering at other levels as well. But again, in order to know God, it's a gift uh, and a knowledge where you can say that God discovers Himself, and through the human being, through the creativity that we can be. Eventually, we get to co-create our reality, right? And there's a quote that I love. The yoga teachers said this, that God exists and can be perceived even on the physical level, because ultimately the entire macrocosm is the body of God. And the mystic poets, that I resonate very much with this mystic part, even if again I grew up as a medical doctor, but again with priests as well. So I have a big openness for the mystic side. And so these poets, they saw, they were describing uh, in verses, in songs, which were very much inspiring, and they are still nowadays, how they saw or they perceived concretely God the Father, even in the physical world, you know. And that's why they were saying that the stars are His eyes, the grass and the trees are, it's His hair, and the rivers are His blood, you know, and the voice of the ocean, the song of the birds, the crying of the newborn baby, you know, and all these other sounds of creation are His voice. So again, obviously, this implies also something that is called transfiguration, and it starts, for me, again, it's up to each person according to which is your own resonance with the archetypes and your dharma. You can there are many, actually, various ways to perceive God, And again, to me, it's that he can be known mainly through love. And obviously, we speak about the archetypes. So that's again, archetypes. Love is one of the archetypes that we speak. You just check other recordings about the archetypes if you didn't. And there are also privileged moments when we can perceive the existence of God in our being easier. The ecstatic states of love or transfiguration in a polar couple relationship, also immense states of compassion, or those states where you really sacrifice various things from your egos, such as when you really practice karma yoga, for example. Or when you're in the presence of somebody who's dying, then you start asking yourself these fundamental questions, and you may even get into these states of grace. All the quantum leaps again, all these genius inspirations, the moments when you fall in love also. So for me, I mean, all these are just some words that are part of what I mean by God. And then a practical way would be how to feel God in our being, I would say, and can we really have a personal relation with God, and how to do that. I would suggest to read the Great Gospel of John by Jacob Lorber. I really like that one very much, and you can really you perceive there's a certain wisdom there and the truth which has a lot of meaning in it, that maybe something will awaken inside of you. Then also, again, we can speak about the role of prayer, and there is in Christianity, but not in just in Christianity. There's all various ways how to approach. I mean, how to awaken actually in yourself this the rest. I mean, to be able to perceive something more than just the eye needs. So it's about cultivating virtues when we can perceive God, I would say. So, but then it's obviously the word besides love. The second word that comes to me, it's about mystery. It's an overwhelming mystery. Is that like the infinite whole that embraces everything, manifested, also non-manifested. So now I'm talking to you because Amit spoke a lot from the scientific perspective. Now I'm going to say more about these other spiritual perspectives. Again, if you think of this concept of God, you can also only understand it as indivisible unity, and this beyond the various modalities that can serve to represent God, according to the needs of the manifestation. And if you think of a plural, which is nonsense when talking about God, even from the Hindu viewpoint, not just from the Judaic, Christian, or Islamic one, and this is because in God's most intimate essence, substantially maybe, God is not just one, but is the one. It's first presented, the one without the second. And even if sometimes it appears to manifest in one of his three main aspects, known in the Vedic tradition as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or this aspect is called also Trimurti, or the triple manifestation. So nonetheless, completely God maintains this prime indivisible nature. I mean, you can also, there's this concept also of God as a person, which is called Ishvara, that allows us to seize the source and the principle of universal manifestation. But again, you see this analogically, of course. So it's a great mystery. Also, the fact that it said that human being was created in the image and likeness of God. So these are things to really deeply meditate. And usually we start meditating about these things when we suffer, when we are in despair, when something happens. It's very interesting how sufferance becomes a great master that makes us think of these things, and eventually plunge into discovering all this mystery gradually, because you will never discover it completely, but it's in the entire manifestation, if you want, everything, begins also and is maintained by this process of resonance, which is another thing to ponder upon, right? So now, if you want, I mean, if you have time, so there is something very practical. If you feel that something resonates in you, or you're asking yourself about discussion, what is God? Something that helped me at the beginning of my journey, even when I was 16, yeah, something like that. And it's the fact that in various traditions, the Sanskrit scriptures as well, for example, they state that if one is attempting to communicate to God, for again, not as a person, but as this everything, for one day and one night without interruption, that something will happen there, So um, and there can be an elevation of your perceptions, for example. So again, it's there are many people who did this practice, so it's even called the 24 hours prayer to God. Yeah, and there are various ways how to prepare. But again, first of all, you have to have something, a fire in your heart, so that you can do this. Otherwise, nobody's doing that. And again, there is a lot about prayer and about this mysterious power of even opening to, towards this idea, even to really to to have this personal relation with God, and eventually to have what Amit is calling dancing with the quantum self. Yeah. So it's as if when you feel in love, and just for a moment, if you're thinking of your beloved, all your heart, all your soul is suddenly you perceive this unexpected happiness, right? So in the same way, there can be ways where you can really feel this kind of love for God. And then obviously you will not feel alone at all, because actually in reality we are never alone. We only feel that for various reasons, especially to unprocessed pain and sufferance, obviously. But again, so that's a suggestion to just try, if you're ready, to see what's happening. If for 24 hours you can just prepare and do this kind of exercise. Just some suggestions if you want for this, for those who are ready for this uninterrupted prayer. Imagine, of course, in India, there are many people who do this kind of practice in various ways, because it's for all the traditions. You need to be isolated, obviously, and fasting. You can just drink water if you really want. Of course, the main obstacle will be that you feel sleepy. Yeah. So you have to prepare and sleep more the day and the night before, and have a perfect vitality, and then kind of start this 24 hours prayer in the morning. Yeah. You need to, of course, it will help to have various symbols that can help you in this way, according to your tradition. Can be images with Jesus, can be aspects of Shiva, can be various things. You can even have an altar to prepare, so that you can perceive a state of sacredness eventually. Because in reality, the woman, the human being is the one that really can make a place sacred. And again, it's very interesting to think of that. Many times we just go to places to perceive the presence of the divine, which can manifest in so many ways. But actually, it will be interesting to bring that, to be able to create this state of sacredness in your own home, wherever you would be. And of course, in your own relationships, it starts from there. So again, a preparation is needed, and also a state of inspiration, something that you really feel that that's the moment. It has to be a good moment there. And then you can prepare various prayers, even God, Heavenly Father, I beg you with humbleness, offer me your supreme grace. Then, of course, there are practices that you can do. You can even, in Christian tradition, we have this prayer of the heart. You can keep even this position of prayer, which is helping to activate the heart. Yeah, for example, better sitting than, of course, just lying in bed. And then just take this day. I mean, nowadays, when everybody is just in a hurry, and it's all this compute technology, which is stealing our attention so much, and it's diminishing all our capacities, just taking one day, even per month, would be ideal. And you're just with yourself in your room, not with your wife, not with your kids, not with your phone, obviously. And just see what's happening when you offer this time for yourself and your personal relation with God. So enough talk for me. Amit?
That was wonderful. Now, such a large topic, I don't want to waste any time. over to Professor Goswami immediately.
Okay, some final comments. So, what can you do to test yourself where you are in terms of your beliefs in God or not? Disbeliefs or confused beliefs about God. If you are a believer in God, then you are a believer in practice of the virtues. You explore the virtues and develop positive emotions, balance your negative with the positive, explore the archetypes through intuition, use rational thinking only for where it belongs, for affairs of the world when it is needed. Otherwise, be open to positive emotional thinking, intuitive thinking, creativity, and all this. The real test is how expanded are you in your consciousness. God enters us. The sign of that is, signature of that is expansion of consciousness, the ability to include others. So, how is your relationship? Do you care? This is the thing. Today, people don't care. Have you noticed we don't have communities anymore? We don't even care for intimate relationships. With one disagreement, we divorce. All that in sickness and in health, marriage vow, all that is gone. Why? Because you are very constricted. What constricts us? This is another way of testing where you are in terms of happiness and conceptualization of God. Rational thinking constricts us. Materialist rational thinking, machine like thinking, completely cuts us off from God, from intuition, from extrasensory perception. Too much dependent on what we gather through senses. Too much involvement with pleasure instead of happiness, expansion of consciousness, caring, love. All produce constructions. Negative emotions produce constructions in a major way. Emotional stress that we all complain produce contraction of consciousness. Having wrong belief systems, like wrong belief in God, or making wrong pictures of God, not using the potentialities we have, that takes us beyond this rationalistic machine-like negative life that many people are content to live, because the advantage is that you don't have to do anything. Only advantage is laziness. You can be as you are, mayhem that it creates in you in terms of mental disorder, and mayhem that creates in society in terms of decline of civilization, but who cares? There is no caring because you are constricted in consciousness. You only care about yourself, me-centered. Which one shall it be? Which life do you want? We can be all satisfied and be crazy. This is what we are doing today. 85% to maybe even more people have just gone crazy, including many of the people who sit in the ivory towers and places of power in government and all that. It's craziness that drives us towards all these ongoing problems of ecology, violence, and of course, lack of physical, mental health, and economic health that we all suffer. Choice is ours. Do you work, engage, explore, meditate, be creative, or do we just eat? Forget drinking, it's really eat, sex, and entertainment. That's the materialist life. Is that what you want for yourself? It's all your choice. This choice we have, all human beings have, irrespective of where you are. Even if you are highly contracted, this choice to say no to conditioning never disappears. You can always say to no to your religious or mechanistic or irrational or rational or whatever that keeps you from expansion. You can always say no and join, help for yourself and for your society. What is God is as fundamental as asking, how can I be healthy? How can I be well? How can I be happy? How can I be intelligent about our planet? How can we save the planet, save democracy, save our systems that we have developed through thousands of years of investigation and trial, thousands of years of using good common sense, good amount of creativity, good amount of consciousness? We are at the crossroads, my friend. Be wise. Choose wisely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I believe this discussion by both of you will probably answer some questions and maybe creating more questions than answers, depending on the mindset of the person. So, in case you have questions, we have an answer for you. That is, you can write to us at info@amitgoswami.org and we will answer your questions. You can visit our website www.amitgoswami.org and see what all we are doing. And people who are really, really looking to try these things out firsthand, there is an opportunity to join our upcoming workshop in Jaipur, India, which will start from 2nd of March. And this is a 10-day workshop, a wonderful one. People from more than 12 countries will be participating in it. And anyone who wants to experience not only this subject, but a host of other things firsthand, then this is the best opportunity. Do reach out to us and we will talk to you. Thank you so much for being with us. We are grateful.